Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn Mead here with January's edition of AVSocial. I'm here again, as usual, with my lovely co-host, Kelly Perkins. Say hi to everyone, Kelly.
Hello, everyone.
And today we are very pleased to be joined by Andrew Eklund, and I hope I pronounced that correctly.
You nailed it.
Andrew is the founder and CEO of a company called Ciceron. And before we get started, Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. We're a 20-year-old digital marketing agency here in Minneapolis. I started the company the summer of 1995, back before digital was sort of a thing, and we're sort of banking on the idea that digital is now a thing. And so 20 years later, we're really enjoying sort of the fruits of our labor. We had a great 2015, and as companies and organizations of all types really try and reorganize themselves around aligning themselves around what their customers actually need from them from a digital standpoint, we've pretty much been there before. So I think we provide some good counsel to them. The name Cicerone actually means a guide, a trusted guide. And that's really what we've been doing for the past 20 years.
That's great. It sounds absolutely like something a lot of folks in our industry need. We're great at what we do, but sometimes on the marketing or the digital technology for pushing our own services end of things, some of our companies lack a little bit, and that's what we hope to, fix with this AVSocial podcast, or at least work to alleviate. And you sound like you have some great words of advice for us. One of the reasons Kelly invited you today is just this week you've put out 25 digital marketing must-haves for 2016. And I read the white paper. It's a fantastic white paper. Kelly thought so as well. Do you want to give us just a little brief overview of the white paper, or what your thought was behind why this was needed and why it was needed now?
Yeah, we have been doing this for a few years. And really what we do right now is just essentially update it. And what you'll find in there is there's not a lot about tactics. It's primarily around ways of thinking, and really ways of thinking about your customers and their lives and how they consider you, how they find you, and as important is how do your existing customers advocate for you out in the world. And in your particular space, one of the things that we find really challenging is that the people that your prospects want to hear from oftentimes are not marketing people. I hate to say this, I'm a marketer, and so it's hard for me to say it sometimes, but we're sometimes the last people they want to hear from. They want to hear from experts. They want to hear from people who really understand the subject matter, both technical experts and leadership of the organizations. And so I spend a lot of my time working with our clients on sort of the organizational management around helping them be present in this digital landscape, helping them enable their employees to participate in all these channels in ways that aren't really disruptive to their daily lives. I mean, they are scientists and engineers and makers, and sometimes they're not great communicators, and so we understand this. And you tell an engineer that we need you to be really active on social media, and they'll run for the exits. And so it's really about putting procedures and methods in place that'll allow them to feel as though they're really part of the brand. And that they are an outward part of the brand, and that marketing is really sort of an enabling organization, less a mouthpiece of the organization, and rather somebody who can help identify who those subject matter experts are, who are the people that the outside world really wants to hear from, and then put really editorial project management, if you will, around that. I don't even really call it marketing. It's basically let engineers and salespeople and leadership be who they are naturally, and then allow marketing people to find ways in which to package up that into great deliverable content. So a lot of the white paper, talks about how to do that. And then there's some byproducts, if you will, towards doing that well. Things like search engine optimization, automation around email, and other sort of delivery ways of doing it that all of that content feeds those different channels. But without that expert opinion and that expert content, you find that it's mostly marketing related content and it doesn't always resonate with the end customer the way you would hope. And so, yeah, these are organizational challenges as much as they are really marketing communications.
Great.
I just love the different pieces of advice you give. You know, the company that I work for, we have 17 offices around the U.S., so it's really hard to get kind of employee advocacy and shared business goals because we're not all together.
Sure.
And it's just, you know, and I'm sure there's tons of other companies that suffer from the same issue, but just to get the same mindset across, you know, from one office to another office, it's a lot of work. You know, it sounds easier. It's easier said than done. So I think a lot, you know, employee advocacy, the shared business goals, all of those things are so important, and I'm glad that you pointed all of those out.
You know, Kelly, I think sometimes we marketers like to give fancy words to things that don't necessarily deserve them. You know, customer advocacy, employee advocacy. I mean, these are words that we use to describe really natural behaviors. You know, a lot of people in B2B spaces would love going to the annual conferences or the shows or CES or whatever it might be. And they're already there. They're doing things naturally. They're talking to people. They're participating in panels. They're maybe they are even tweeting or doing other sorts of activities that are just coming naturally to them. And of course, we just like to put a big fancy word on it, and then therefore alienating everybody in the process. But
right.
You know, people who really enjoy where they work and what they do will naturally talk about that, whether it's in person or at a conference, or again, if you're lucky enough to be on stage at a panel or to give a presentation. There's really no difference. And so I don't think we're really asking people to do something that's so supernatural. We're asking people to do things that they're already doing, but maybe in a more consistent basis. And obviously, as marketers, you know, when we have those sort of intense opportunities like a conference or a trade show, you know, it's our job to gather up all of that content and to sort of make known, hey, you know, if you're going to be out there participating, you know, we would love for you to share with us. And we get into the job then of sort of syndicating that content that's already naturally being created, and we have to put them into those various channels. And you know, that's just, again, that's sort of just organizational structure around real natural behaviors.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is don't find the guy that just comes to work every day drudgingly and does his job, and just find the guys that are passionate, that love what they do, and that share it anyway, and encourage that a little more.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just, you know, taking out that curmudgeon person for lunch and sticking your iPhone in the middle of the table and say, I'm going to record this conversation. And you're going to get the ums and the ahs and the F-bombs and all that kind of stuff. And guess what? That's exactly what people want to hear. They don't want to hear some sort of filtered, you know, cleansed whatever. They want to hear, like, what is this person thinking about? Like, what do they care about? And that's content, right? And I bet if you did that, you know, and you didn't add too much sex appeal to it in post-production, you know, you just put it out there, it would really resonate with the people that you're trying to reach. In fact, maybe even more so than if we polished it up.
That's a great point.
One other thing I want to say a little bit about people who obviously sometimes are sort of natural advocates, the people who are highly enthusiastic. One of the things that I've found over my years doing this is that sometimes the people who are the most enthusiastic about specifically social media are not oftentimes your best spokespeople. It's sometimes people who are passionate about social media are just, that's what they're into. You know what I mean? And they're sharing everything from what's happening on the Oscars to, what's happening, and taking a picture every single dinner they've ever made and putting it up on Instagram, and they get this giant following. Yeah, but there might be like 2 or 3 actual prospect customers. So you can't really look at those top follower accounts and say, these are our most highly engaged. Or are highly, I shouldn't say that. They might be highly engaged, but they may not be influential. And
Right.
so a lot of the work that we do is just sort of help, don't go around the office and say, who's on Pinterest, right? Great, you're on the Pinterest team. Because what they could be pinning might have nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish as a business. So it does take some discipline to figure out, who those advocates are, the people who should be participating.
Right.
By the way, it does come at some consternation when you have to inform that person with 20,000 Pinterest followers that you're not going to be a part of the core team because you're not influential. That's where you have to use your marketing panache to like message it in a kind sort of way.
Well, and a technology company doesn't really need 20,000 cake recipes pinned on their company site either. So.
Well, and I've seen countless companies that have gone down that path, and they can't figure out why it's not resonating, why it's not creating leads or whatever it might be, and it's because the people who were provided the kindling for it weren't really going to be that. I mean, look, I'm wearing this Norwegian sweater, right? I have a cabin up north. Of course I do. My last name is Eklund. I know about wet kindling and making fires out in the woods. So, you got to have good dry kindling.
So Andrew, what do you think is going to be the big thing of 2016? We always hear, like you mentioned before, like the marketing jargon, like inbound marketing and content creation and blah, blah, blah. What do you guys see at your agency as being kind of the big thing this year, and maybe help put it into some layman's terms?
I'm going to say a couple things that are probably largely unpopular, and then I'm going to say something, then I'm going to point out a couple sexy things that I think are real. I think what needs to take off, and whether it does or doesn't, is still to be seen. But I think automation, marketing automation, is just sitting right there ready. A lot of B2B companies have pretty good databases in place. They know customers, but they're still batching and blasting, sending the same email message to everybody, regardless of what role that person might be in the company, regardless of where that person might be in the decision-making process. If you've got if a sales cycle is 6 months to a year or longer, there's very specific stages in that cycle that somebody needs to be communicated with very different messaging. And so that sounds really complicated sort of at the outset, but once you map all of that out, like these different persona types or these different roles, that even persona is a piece of jargon that we like to use. All we're talking about are groups of people who share similar traits, right? Groups of people who are in purchasing versus an engineer or versus somebody who's actually going to make the decision. Many different people participate in a decision to hire a technology or a company or to purchase, to make a capital purchase. And so all we're talking about is using the technology that's available to us to automate some of that and make it much easier. I'll tell you, the hardest thing to do in the world is to take an email database, blast it with the same messages over and over again and expect leads. That is the hardest thing in the world to actually get success out of. And yet 90% of organizations, that's exactly how they do it. Which has always kind of been funny to me, because we're engineer type people, right, in B2B. So let's engineer it, right? Let's apply the principles we would to our products to our marketing. So this is not like, I'm not talking about, Venus and Mars stuff here. So that's sort of like one thing for sure that needs to happen in 2016 if it hasn't already. Sort of on the sexier front, I think that there are some amazing things that are happening right now with 360 video. And virtual reality. And now that's been around for a long time, but it's really starting to hit the mainstream. And so the ability to do much more accessible VR content, for example, to be able to walk through an environment and to be able to tilt your phone, or if you have a headset, to be able to look at all the nooks and crannies of an environment and figure out where systems should go, or to help provide rendering to allow a prospect to walk through. I mean, I'm sure people in your environment have been doing this for years with CAD and so forth. It's just getting much more rich, and the tools to do this. I mean, even YouTube now accepts 360-degree video. So, and the New York Times sent out, I don't know, 1 million Google Cardboard headsets out to its subscribers. So, you know, this isn't like really whiz-bang stuff, but it is super highly applicable, I think, in the B2B space. So that'd be the second thing. That's a little bit shiny. The third thing that I think is pretty interesting right now is just what's happening in the advertising space for B2B. That a lot of the advertising engineers, back when the economy really blew, spent a lot of their brain power creating platforms to buy and sell advertising in much more targeted ways. The problem is that a lot of the advertising inventory that was being sold were what we call the belly fat ads, right? Just like all that crap that you get all the time, just like ads that mean nothing to anybody. But that doesn't necessarily undermine what was actually happening underneath in terms of the math and the algorithms that were there. So that has now, over the past couple of years, really matured, and now you see real high-quality publishers and advertisers using that math to start to deliver much better and more relevant experiences to customers and prospects. And also not just branded advertising, it's lead gen, it's calls to action, it's really highly targeted, very focused content that users actually want. And it's using all the math that was created kind of when things were bad. So I think, and then that whole term for what I'm talking about is called the programmatic advertising space. And so I think that's the third area that you're going to see. You're already seeing it in the consumer space, but I think in the business space, that's going to be the third trend that you're going to really, like a year from now, we'll be talking about it and say it really blew up.
Cool. Never thought we'd be going for spam or any of that stuff, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, when you think about spam and you think about, I mean, that's what we've been doing for years. I mean, the batching and blasting to people on an email database, we've been doing it wrong for a long time. I shouldn't say we've never done it wrong here at Cicero. But, you know, the market has, because it's easy. You take a database, you blast it, done. Somebody scratched something off their to-do list, and it's just, it's a mess.
It's amazing to me, though, how many people believe that still. I mean, I have salespeople on my team where they ask, they're like, well, we just want to buy a list and call everyone on that list. I mean, do you have any idea how big of a time that is? And money, you know?
Right.
Let's have some strategy behind this. Let's actually target people, and let's do it in a thought-provoking way that they're actually going to enjoy, not just cold calling people.
Well, and you know, the only people who make money in that whole process are the list brokers. The only people. The people who buy the list end up using them, and then they find out that there's, you know, as we say in our business, you know, we're emailing to dead people. Okay, this is true. There are dead people on those lists, and so the list brokers are the only ones who are making money in that. And I know as a salesperson who has to meet a quota, somebody tells you I have 10,000 people on a list that you can buy for, I don't care what the number is. It's tempting, I get it. But the fact of the matter is the performance of that list is still going to be pretty horrific.
Yeah.
And again, I don't have a problem with, I don't want to say I have a problem purchasing a list. I don't have a problem sending through somebody else's list that they've curated and they've pruned, and it's their own list, and you can sort of, I don't want to say rent that list, but get some real estate from their own communications. You know, maybe it's a trade association in the industry. You know, those lists are great. But buying lists, renting lists, it's been a bad business since the day it started, and it's still a bad business.
I know even within our own company, the few times that we've tried to generate lists, even from our own customers, the amount of effort and time it takes just to clean it, make sure they're current customers, make sure that guy that we worked with 10 years ago is still there or in that position. I mean, I can't imagine doing that as a job. I would probably kill myself if I had to do that as a job. So you know that those lists aren't clean and they're not very useful. Even our own semi-curated lists sometimes aren't useful. So yeah, you're definitely on the money with that. There's no way to go from there with bot lists.
Right. It's just, and again, it seems so tempting, right? I mean, the promise is so tempting. I have this list. It's it's like the old Glengarry Glen Ross, right? These are the Glengarry leads, and it's like we're not Alec Baldwin. Like there's no like special list out there that you can buy. Now there are going to be, if you have any list brokers who hear this podcast, or they're going to tell you otherwise. But I've never seen it perform. Again, 20 years doing this, I've never seen it perform.
Andrew, could you go into a little bit about brand advocacy? I know that you guys are really, I don't want to say push that, but could you maybe just explain to some of our audience what brand advocacy is? Again, maybe in some layman's terms.
Yeah, so I always look at it this way. If you're a salesperson, what's the best kind of lead? The best lead that you get is a referral from a happy customer. If I were to talk to any salesperson and say, I could give you 10 leads right now, what source do you want them to come from? They would always say, I want a referral from one of our best customers, right? That is the outcome of brand advocacy. Now, that happens naturally sort of in the wild, right? Where your happy customers will, again, maybe be at a conference or something, and they'll say, I work with Cicerone, and I love this company, and they're so easy to work with, and I get great value. If you're ever thinking about hiring a digital agency, you got to call these guys. And if the person I'm talking to is like somebody I really trust, or somebody who's a friend of mine, or somebody who's like me, I'm going to add Cicerone to the list. I mean, there's just no question about that. We do it in our private lives all the time, right? I mean, if I go to a city and I want to go to a restaurant, I might put something out on Facebook and say, hey, in fact, just last week I was in LA. I mean, how many restaurants could I choose from, right? And I'm like, I'm in West Hollywood. I need to figure out a place to eat tonight. Does anybody know? Right? And like 4 or 5 people who are from LA, who are friends of mine, say, you got to try this new place on such and such avenue, right? And I'm there. Like, I don't even read the Yelp reviews, right? I just go. That happens in business all the time. And it happens in business because the transaction values are so much higher, right? Now, if I go to a restaurant and don't have a great experience, I might be $50 in the hole. But if I make the wrong decision in business, I might be 50 million in the hole. So, the transaction value is high, and therefore a lot more consideration is going to go into that. You're not going to do a Google search and buy who's ever comes up number 1 at Google, right? I'm not saying SEO is not important or search engine marketing is not important. It is, but nobody's going to buy that way, right? They're going to buy because they've heard from somebody who's worked with that company before, who's had a positive experience, who's addressed the issues in a first-person account that's meaningful to that potential buyer. And so brand advocacy as a discipline is helping clients not rely on hope to make that happen. Like, well, I hope people say good things about us, right? My overly used phrase is hope is a bad business model. It's not very predictable. And so we like to put discipline around those activities. So identifying who are those very best customers, identifying who are the people who would tell about our experience, their experience with us and our products, and who would be willing to share those experiences to a broader community. Whether that's a virtual community, say on a LinkedIn group, or even a private chat room of some trade association obscure website where all the important people gather. It's the virtual equivalent of what might happen around the bar, at the conference, after the panel, right? Yep. Like, that's where the best stuff happens. Again, you ask any salesperson, where do they want to be to try and get leads? It's usually at the bar, after the conference, where everybody's sort of loosening up and just speaking freely. We're talking about the sort of digital equivalent of that, and providing some method, some identification, and some channels to figure out how to get those stories in front of people. That's brand advocacy.
Okay.
That's great. It sounds a lot like the actual formal business of zombie loyalists, which is something we talked about with Peter Shankman a few months ago when he appeared on our show with his new book. And it's great to see that there are groups like Cicerone and I'm sure other marketing groups that have figured out how to take that message and distill it into something that you can set in your business and say, we're going to develop these leads, we're going to develop these loyalists to come out and provide us with love letters or statements about how great we are, or just a couple of simple tweets or video snips. That's fantastic. We had Peter on, and it was like, that's a great idea. How do we do that? And it sounds like you're starting to figure it out.
Well, and I think one of the key pieces there also is that there's a difference between an incentivized referral that you might see, say, in a formal referral program, where, hey, we'll give you a $100 Amazon gift card if you forward this to 5 of your friends. You know, I, as an individual, am not going to give up the identities of 5 of my friends for $100. That's $20 a piece. Those relationships are more valuable to me than $20.
Right.
And so an advocacy program is true advocacy. It's not incentivized. It's not, bought and paid for. That's true advocacy. Now, there are some referral programs and things like that where those sort of incentives work, but we're not trying to buy people's loyalty. We're trying to extract people's honest opinions about us. The other side of advocacy, by the way, is sort of how do we improve our company? And so sometimes we ask our advocates and say, where's our soft underbelly? Like, where are we not true to our brand promise? You can help us. We're always striving to be better. Is it customer service? Is it how we deliver? Is it the quality of the product themselves? Sometimes just being asked is the greatest thing you can do to build an advocate. And on the other side of it, sometimes a detractor can be won over by simply saying they matter and asking for their input. Somebody goes and blasts you online someplace, and all of a sudden it shows up in a Google search someplace. I always say to my clients, reach out to that person. Say, hey, we've heard what you said. I think you might have some valid points. What can you tell us? Oftentimes that's the problem with the internet. Everybody has a megaphone, so they go out and they blast away, thinking that nobody's listening, and all of a sudden you listen, and they'll turn around. They will go back, and they will change that review. They'll retract it. You can turn that into an advocate. And sometimes that really matters if that person is really an important person in the industry. Like, you need that person on your side. Now, if that person is an expert and can tell you how to make your business better, that's even better, right? You can't sugarcoat it. So, I think that, if it's a real problem, you got to go fix it, because that's just one loud person of many, perhaps, unhappy people.
Yeah, you can't ignore it. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's fun to ignore it, because then you can go back, you can go to bed at night just dumb, happy, and stupid. So, but it's not going to help anybody.
Fair enough. Well,
one of the other things I noticed in your guide of things that we must have in 2016, I know we've talked about it for a couple years now, and obviously as a country or as a humanity, we're not there yet. If it's in your guide, still, mobile. What are your thoughts on mobile? It's here. We need to use it. What can you tell us?
Yeah, we've quickly gone from mobile being the second screen to mobile being the first screen, meaning that more people are accessing web content now through mobile devices than they are through desktop, larger screens. Now, but once again, this gets back down to knowing who your customers are. If your key customer is a director or a VP of purchasing, they're most likely at a desk, and they are sitting looking at a large monitor. And so you need to be able to provide them, if you're giving them all sorts of legal documentation in 8-point type, they're probably not going to read that on a phone, right? So you need to be able to make sure that those are files that they can access. Now, on the other hand, if your customer is out in the field so to speak, whether that's on location or whatever, they probably have their phone. If they're looking for aftermarket, information, like I'm on a job site, I need a part, an iPad is becoming sort of the standard, or a larger smartphone, whether it's an iPhone 6 or a Samsung phone, where that's a business tool for them, right? And so they want to be able to access that information. Something I want to sort of point out about that is that, we've been talking a lot about marketing, but, really at the end of the day, it's how do they experience your brand using these tools? And sometimes that's for existing customers. So, how do I work with you? Can I order this part? Can I look at the schematics? Can I speak with somebody? Are you helping me make my job function easier? If you're hard to work with and it's going to take me 24 hours to get the answer that I need because your outdated systems, that's how it has to work, and a new competitor comes along and has a much easier way to do business with you, sometimes that's going to get added to the ledger, of A and B. You might have a better quality product but be hard to do business with. Somebody else might have a product that's almost as good but a way easier way to do business, and that's kind of that actually definitely gets weighed into the decision. So I think of that as being part of the brand experience, right? It's not marketing, it's just how do I experience doing business with you?
Right, right. That's great advice. Making things easier for our customers is kind of what business is about. I mean, we want to provide products and services and make their lives easier without being yet another hassle.
Nobody ever argued about a 3-ring binder when everybody used 3-ring binders, right? It's like that's just how you did it. Nobody had a better way. But now that the technology, the way it's worked, it's a clear differentiator for some brands how they can deliver information and connections.
And it's interesting too because like you said, it goes so much further than just marketing. It's everything from your entire business process.
Mm-hmm.
From how do they get information all the way to the end of invoicing and then support and everything after that. It has to be a seamless process from beginning to end. Otherwise, you're right. There's other companies out there that do it better.
So they do it better, and sometimes they disrupt the entire industry in how they do business. And you'll hear brands say, "Yeah, but we have better products." Yeah, but you're so hard to do business with that the quality of the product actually gets trumped by user experience.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I could name a couple I won't, but I could name a couple manufacturers in our industry that I know my engineers, they have better products, but they're like, I can't handle their website or I can't handle their ordering process. We're going to go with the next best product.
Right, and they're not making immature decisions. They're not saying I don't like the colors on your website, right? They're not saying I think your website design blows. I mean, what they're saying is you're hard to do business with. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And again, that's not a marketing function. That's an operations function that touches on marketing because it's about experience and design and all of this. And so I don't think, like, for example, I spend a lot of my time breaking down the sort of Berlin walls between marketing and technology, or marketing and engineers. We really truly are all in this together. The right brain of the marketing sort of logic these days, the creative side, is still clearly important, but the left side of the brain, where you have to think about data and you have to talk about true insights and you have to talk about information design and architecture and all of that, that's the left side of the brain. And let's be honest with you, we're guilty too. I mean, the entire advertising industry in particular is still wrestling with this. These are some wonky creative types, right, who are all of a sudden having to become data geeks, and they didn't want that. They didn't go to art school to learn about data. And so you do see a lot of consternation in my industry just among advertising and marketers and digital marketers. Now, data for us has been there since day one because it was there and it should be used. But, creative still clearly means something. But I don't. If I'm in the field and I'm trying to order a part, I certainly do not want creative, right? I want something that's just going to give me the part that I need because it knows that I've logged in and it's me, so it's my part. So don't make me go search for my part. It knows my account information, so just let me hit a button that says order. And it should also know, because I'm using a smartphone, I have GPS, so it should know what job site I'm at. Right? And I could override that in case Google Maps or whatever backend you're using is maybe screwing you up and sending you to the Starbucks across the street rather than your job site. I should be able to override that, but I should be able to look at that quickly and say, yep, that's where I'm at, accept, and then be done. Right? That's a one-click sort of thing, and that's what people are looking for.
It's so simple.
It's so simple, and you know what? It's not that hard. I'll tell you what, it's harder to do it wrong these days.
Right.
It's harder to do it wrong.
And yet, so many people do sometimes.
Well, because we've been doing it wrong for a long time, and so doing things incorrectly comes naturally.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like overthinking it and making it more complex than it needs to be.
Yeah, I've had clients tell me point blank saying, I wouldn't buy from us. I mean, they do. They say, we have to solve this problem because I wouldn't buy from us. Wow. So let's go solve that problem. If you're saying it about yourself, I'm pretty sure that there's people out in the market who are saying the same thing.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating. And this is some great advice, Andrew. Thank you so much for coming here and talking with us today. From the sound of it, Kelly and I are more important than some of our engineers might think. We need to break down these walls and bring the marketing and the engineering together a little more, it sounds like, and be more holistic in our approach with customers and within our organizations, I think.
That's right.
So I think we're at the top of the hour, and I'm pretty sure Andrew had a hard stop, but we appreciate very much coming out and talking with us today. Give us a quick wrap-up. If people want to find you, are you on Twitter, or what's your company website? How can people get hold of you if they want to learn more about Andrew and Cicerone and all of these great ideas?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you very much. It was great talking with you. Yes, we do have a website. It's www.cicerone.com, Ciceron. On Twitter, you could either follow our company Twitter account, which is Cicerone HQ, or if you wanted to follow me, it's A. Eklund, AEKLUND. And yeah, we publish a lot of white papers and research, and we have a lot of fun and a lot of case studies too. So if you're just looking to get some ideas, we do a lot of that. And our weekly newsletter called the Cicerone, you can subscribe to that. And again, it's not marketing fluff at all. It's just good stuff that we're thinking about, research that we're finding. It comes out every Friday morning, and we're told, and the metrics show that people enjoy it. So
it's awesome. I would definitely recommend it.
Great.
And if it's all right,
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. And if we could, maybe shoot us the link to. Yeah, we got the PDF that we're talking about. This 25 digital marketing must-haves. If you could send us the link, we'll make sure to include it with the podcast so people watching at home can download and get the benefit as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
And of course, joined today by Kelly, our lovely co-host. Kelly, where can folks find you if they want to talk to you?
You can shoot me an email at kelly.perkins@avisystems.com or on Twitter at AVI_Kelly or AVNation as well.
Wonderful. And of course, as usual, I'm Dawn Mead, AV Dawn on Twitter, AV Dawn elsewhere in the social universe, with NetAV, NET-AV, and you can find me at AVNation as well. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.